What if I told you that the most dangerous weapon in the Middle East right now isn't a toy soldier? It's not a toy plane, not a toy bomb, not even the scary toy nobody's allowed to use. It's a drinking fountain. 2 weeks ago, while the big kids were busy fighting over toys and oil wells and all the stuff we talked about last time, someone quietly walked over to the drinking fountain and smashed it. 30 kids woke up the next morning with empty cups and dry mouths. And then, the other side did the exact same thing. Smashed their drinking fountain as revenge. This is the water war. Nobody's talking about it, and it might be the scariest part of this whole fight. Let me explain it. Like you're 5, okay? Before we get into who broke what, you need to understand one very specific thing about the Middle East playground. There's almost no water. Not much water. Almost none. The kids who live around the Persian Gulf, the Saudi kid, the Kuwait kid, the Bahrain kid, the Qatar kid, the UAE kid, they all built their houses in the driest part of the playground. For a long time, that was a huge problem. You need water to do everything. Drink, cook, take a bath, brush your teeth, grow food. Without water, you can't even make mud pies. But then these kids figured out something genius. They built magic machines. These machines suck in ocean water, gross, salty, undrinkable ocean water, and turn it into clean, fresh water you can actually drink. Like a magic trick, but real. And they built hundreds of them right on the edge of the beach. Now, how much do these kids depend on these magic water machines? Let me show you. The Qatar kid. 99% of everything he drinks comes from these machines. 99. The Bahrain kid. 100%. He turned off his underground tap completely back in 2016. Said, "I don't need it anymore. My magic machine does everything." Every single sip he takes. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, all from the machine. The Kuwait kid, 90%. The UAE kid, over 80. The Saudi kid, the biggest one in the neighborhood, more than half of his drinking water comes from these machines. Now, here's the part that should make your stomach drop. All these magic machines, they're just sitting there, right on the coastline, in the open. No fences, no locks, and everybody on the playground knows exactly where they are. It's like leaving the only water jug in the middle of a dodgeball game. March 7th, 2026. The kid from Iran, the same one we talked about last time, the one whose toys just got smashed in that big fight. He comes out and points across the playground. He says, "The big kid just broke my drinking fountain." There's a little island in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz. Remember that tight little door where all the toy trucks with oil have to squeeze through? That island is called Qeshm, and it had one magic water machine. Just one. 30 little groups of kids depended on that single machine for water. And overnight, someone smashed it. The water stopped. Now, the big kid said, "Wasn't me." His best friend said, "Wasn't me either." Even the guy in charge said, "I don't know anything about it." Doesn't matter. The Iran kid wasn't interested in who did it. He wanted payback. The very next day, March 8th, a paper airplane flew across the sandbox and crashed into a drinking fountain in Bahrain. Remember the Bahrain kid? The one whose entire water supply, every single drop, comes from magic machines. Yeah, that kid's fountain. 3 kids standing nearby got hurt from flying pieces. A school building next door got cracked. But here's the weird part. The Iran kid said he wasn't actually aiming at the fountain. He said he was aiming at the big kid's treehouse next door, the one the big kid uses as a base. In playground language, "You broke my fountain, so I broke your friend's fountain. And technically I was aiming at your clubhouse, so it's your fault his fountain is broken." That's how kids argue when they know what they're doing. But this isn't the scary part. This was just the beginning. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, they broke some fountains. But we already have a huge fight going on. Toys being smashed, planes flying, missiles going back and forth. Why should I care about a fountain? Because a fountain is different from a toy. Let me explain. When someone breaks your toys, that stinks. Your favorite truck is gone. You're mad. But you can play with other stuff. You can borrow a toy. You can even sit in the corner and do nothing. You'll survive. When someone breaks your fountain, and it's the only fountain, a kid can only go 3 days without water. That's it. Not 3 weeks. Not 3 months. 3 days. And remember, these kids live in the hottest part of the playground, the part where the sun is so big it melts crayons, where the air feels like breathing through a warm, wet towel. 3 days in that heat without water. That's not a problem. That's game over. Now count the kids. The Qatar kid has 3 million people in his house, almost all of them drinking from magic machines. The Bahrain kid, 1.5 million. Kuwait, 4 million. Saudi Arabia, 36 million. UAE, 10 million. That's over 50 million kids whose water comes from machines sitting on the beach, in the middle of an active dodgeball war, with no protection. And the Iran kid just looked at every single one of those machines, pointed at them all and said, out loud, on the record, if anyone breaks my power supply, I will smash every single drinking fountain on this side of the playground, every single one. That's not a threat about toys. That's not a threat about oil trucks. That's a threat about water. About the one thing every single kid needs to stay alive. 50 million kids. One threat, and the machines they need are just sitting there in the open. But here's the thing that makes this entire situation even more terrifying. This has already happened before. 1991, the Gulf War, a different fight, a different decade, but the same playground. Back then, Iraq invaded Kuwait, and one of the first things the Iraq kid did when he stomped into Kuwait's sandbox, he smashed the water machines. The Kuwait kid, whose drinking water was 90% machine-made, woke up with no water, and it took months to fix. Aid teams from other playgrounds had to bring water in on little trucks just to keep kids alive. Think about that. Not days, months without working fountains in the desert. And that wasn't even the only time. In 2019, a group of kids in Yemen, the ones called Houthis, launched attacks near the Saudi kids' water machines. They did it again in 2022. Each time the grown-ups looked the other way. Each time nobody pointed at the rule book. Which is weird. Because the rule book is very, very clear about this. See, there is a rule on this playground. It's been there since 1977. The playground rule book, the one the grown-ups wrote after the last time the world nearly burned down, says this: you are not allowed to break, destroy, move, or mess with anything that kids need to survive, especially drinking water. That's not a suggestion, that's the rule, written down by the grown-ups in the Geneva Conventions. It gets even worse. There's another rule, the one that created the playground court, where kids who break the big rules get sent. And it says, if you starve kids on purpose as part of a fight, that's a crime. A serious one. And cutting off a kid's only water supply. In a desert, that counts as starving them. So here's the question. If the rules have been there since 1977, and two sides just broke each other's drinking fountains, and one side is threatening to break all of them, why isn't anybody being called to the principal's office? Why isn't anyone in trouble? Because on this playground, rules only work when someone's willing to enforce them. And right now, the grown-ups are busy watching the toy fight. Nobody's looking at the fountains. If this video is showing you a part of this fight that nobody else is covering, share it with a friend. because most people think this war is about missiles and oil. This part is about survival. Here's the thing that scares me most. We're only 3 weeks into this fight. The fountain attacks so far have been small. One machine here, one machine there. But the Iran kid's threat, that wasn't small. He said all of them, all the fountains in the UAE, all the fountains in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, all of them, every machine, every power cable, every drop. If that actually happens, this isn't a fight about who has the best toys anymore. This is a fight about who gets to drink. And in a desert where 50 million kids survive on magic machines that turn ocean water into life, turning off those machines isn't strategy, it's the end of the game. The Iran fight started with toy soldiers and crashed airplanes, but it might end with a broken drinking fountain. The most expensive thing on the playground was never a toy. It was always the thing every kid needs to survive. And right now, both sides have their hands on the tap, ready to turn it off. If this is the first video of ours you're watching, we explained the full Iran fight in our last video. It's right here. Watch that one next and everything will make sense. One question for the comments. Should breaking a kid's drinking fountain be a playground crime? Yes or no? See you in the playground.